Hey, good afternoon and welcome to this Mind Chat. Today we have a very, very special host. Live from London, we have Parul Kaul-Green. Parul, she's the head of AXA NEXT Labs for Europe. And so, Parul, I'm really, really happy to have you with us today.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Alberto.
It's a pleasure. First of all, in time of COVID-19, the first mandatory question is, how are you? How are people in AXA? How everything's in London?
I'm well. The family is well. Everyone we know in AXA Next as well. So it's going good so far. Thank you for asking. I hope you're too.
We are. Yeah, thank you for asking. So, Parul, so the goal of this conversation today is go through what AXA as a group is doing regarding a very, very hot topic that is innovation, and specifically open innovation. There is a lot of, I think, curiosity and I think a big demand of understanding more how the new AXA Next model works, how it's structured. And so that is something we'll definitely go through over our conversation. Also try to get a better understanding what are the different tools and instruments that are under the AXA Next hat. And so, first of all, just to start our conversation, will be interesting to know from you what is your background. Let's start from the most recent one. I know that you are being named one of the top 17 powerful insurtech women for this year. So I think it's congratulations, first of all. And maybe we can go through a bit your experience before AXA and in AXA. What has been your career so far?
So I'll start from the very beginning. I started my career as a global management associate at Citigroup. This was after I finished my MBA. It was in the Global Consumer Bank, and I was based in Asia. And after that, I started working in .com, a mobile virtual network operator, which did not survive the slump. But the VC which funded it decided that I had skill sets for joining the venture capital group, and I joined as an investment analyst. I also did a lot of strategic consulting and growth capital advisory. And through the strategic consulting, I joined the investment management, had a CFA charter, became the global head of M&A and strategy at Aviva Investors, which manages close to 400 billion of assets under management, and latterly headed strategy, M&A, and innovation at AXA UK and Ireland. And now I head up the AXA Lab for Europe for AXA Next. It's part of the group innovation ecosystem.
So let's start from the broader approach. How you define or you describe the AXA Group approach to open innovation?
So how I would describe, technically, it would be a semi-open ecosystem. We have innovation which is generated in-house within the AXA Group. We have resources, capabilities, and intellect of 170,000 of our employees who contribute to our internal innovation. Externally, we have, in the open ecosystem, relationships through our partners, through academia, through technology, think tanks, and also we have AXA Research Fund, which is investing. It's not informally because it's a foundation and not for profit. It invests in academic research in areas which are interesting for us. So it is a collaborative effort, both internal and external innovation.
And narrowing a bit the scope to the collaboration with startups and scale-ups, how does AXA typically works with startups and scale-ups?
So it's interesting. We work with the startups, scale-ups, and the technology ecosystem in two different ways. One, we work transversally or across board at the group level through group innovation. We also, through our regional entities, and we have 60 of them, work in the regional ecosystem markets. In, say, for example, in Italy, we have our Italian team, which will work with the fintech ecosystem and insurtech ecosystem in Italy, and so similarly in Germany, UK, France, Asia, which is a very thriving ecosystem, transversally on topics which could be interesting for all entities, specifically in the area of insurtech and digital health. That's where the group innovation comes into play. And AXA Lab, which I head for Europe, our goal is to, we say, connect, disseminate, and grow. And connections here are with the startup ecosystem, technology ecosystems in areas of interest. So we, on a yearly basis, across our 4 labs in London, Paris, which I head, Shanghai, and San Francisco, see close to 2,000 startups. And we speak with them, find out if there are interesting technologies coming into play which could help our innovation within the AXA group, and then connect them back into the process owners, and in some instances also for investment. So this is with the build, buy, and partner thesis, which is central to the AXA Next.
So you mentioned process owners and investment. So there are two separate paths. The first potential. So again, if I try to translate, so the AXA Labs are a sort of sensors that are spread in the most thriving ecosystems. You mentioned Silicon Valley, you mentioned China, and then Europe, London, and Paris. And then, so they act as a sensor, intercept the most interesting solution, and then you connect internally in AXA, either for a potential collaboration, I assume with business units, and or if there is an investment opportunity, an investment need with the most appropriate investment vehicle. So focusing on the investment side, and then we'll go back to the collaboration side that is equally important. And most of the time, they're not exactly two separate fields. As far as I know, there are at least 2 big investment vehicles inside AXA. The first one is called AVP, AXA Ventures Partners. The other one is Kamet Ventures. And then I know that there are also opportunity to AXA partners to make other direct investments. So can you probably give us a bit of coordinates also, assuming that you are from the other side, that there are different vehicles, which is the different goals of these different instruments, different vehicles?
So you're right. On the group or on the transversal level, we have two vehicles. There's AXA Venture Partners, which is a corporate venture capital unit. It invests through fund investing in direct investments, and the total corpus there is 425 million of direct investments and 375 million euros of fund-of-fund investments, which again goes into across stages from seed through to growth equity. And the checks that
60% direct and 40% indirect through funds.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sort of. But the split is not determined 60-40. It was more organically determined as we saw opportunities. We started off with a direct fund. The direct fund were there is 2 tranches to the direct fund. These are all regulated funds. So AMF fund and SEC regulated fund. The SEC is focused on US investments, and the AMF one is European and also Asia investments. And as we were investing in these funds, we discovered that there were a great deal of opportunities for our LPs in the fund-of-fund areas where we saw a lot of interesting investments coming up. So that's why another fund was created, which was more fund-of-fund. And we've also announced, and this will soon, with the French government, that we will be investing in later stage as well. And the intent was that a lot of listings that are happening in NASDAQ and in technology players are happening in either China and US, and there is not a lot of play coming in from European nations. And when you see the kind of technologies that are emerging here, like biotechnology, there's a whole lot of great work being done in genetics and in nanotechnology in Europe, but they're going for listings to NASDAQ. So what we are trying to create through this later stage fund is a pipeline for ventures which will become the future tech leaders for Europe. So that is another fund which will be which we have commitment so far of 250 million, but we will start manning that fund within this year.
Okay, and so the goal is mostly for later stage, with the goal to fostering IPOs and on the stock markets, if I got it right.
Yes.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. And what about Kamet Ventures? So what's the difference between AVP and Kamet Ventures?
So Kamet Ventures is a startup studio, which is, and it also calls itself a venture builder and investor focused on insurtech, health tech, and mobility. So it's created as a separate entity with AXA as its only LP as of the moment. And it was set up in 2015, and it was dedicated to creating innovative companies through incubation. And the teams, the Kamet venture has a part called Factory, which actually starts, it ideates and then solidifies, and then it also builds teams around the idea. And we've produced 17 separate ventures. Some of the most successful, one of them who are very busy at the moment, is a teleconsultation service, Care, in France. They've also created Birdie, which is also, again, very, very busy because it supports elderly and vulnerable through its SaaS platform. And it supports care workers in case management of these elderly patients. So there are interesting companies that have been incubated. And so far, AXA at each stage is invited to invest and has a first right of refusal in that instance. So it's not really an investor, more an incubator and a startup studio.
So you work with very, very early stage startups that have obviously a specific addressing specific challenges that you're looking at, and then you help them to build them up. And then, if needed, there might be a further investment from the other vehicles, that is AXA Venture Partners, or from Kamet itself. Kamet itself first, maybe also AXA Venture Partners later on. And if not, maybe they can be always open to investment from third parties. So that is that it works, if I got it right?
That the external parties, yes, would in its next phase, that would be they would also open their cap table to external LPs.
Okay, got it. And again, working with really early stage solution, do you have an idea of what might be the success rates of this kind of solution? Because working with early stage, again, there is typically you seed plenty, multiple seed, and then at the end the results are minimal. But I heard some success story. So, which is the ratio in terms of startups were able to be built into organic, and the one that didn't make it? Do you have any figures that you can share?
I have some headline figures around AXA Venture Partners, which I can share with you. That I think they currently have an active portfolio of 41, and I believe they started off investing in 67 ventures, have had 10 exits so far. Median round size is 6.5 million, and they cut checks between 1 million to 10 million. So around that, so if you see from 60 something to 41 active with 10 exits. There have been some closures as well. I could potentially get the stats, but as of the moment, I don't have it ready.
Okay, I don't have at hand again. It's difficult to get out, but okay, that is important. But I think the ratio is interesting: 67, 41 active, and 10 exits. Again, we're talking about probably a time period of a few years, right?
Yes, 2015 was when we launched it.
So for 5 years. So I think it's the matrix that makes more pretty sense. Again, this is something that is quite consistent with the industry standard. And you are saying that you're mostly investing with AXA Venture Partners between Series A and Series B, again, given the ticket size that you mentioned.
Yes.
Some success story from AXA Venture Partners investments that you want to mention? Again, I know it's difficult to pick up one case from the other, but some success stories.
So the ones that the team is proud of all of its investments. Sure. Some which have done exceptionally well is Policy Genius, Jennifer Fitzgerald, who's a really, really competent CEO and co-founder. They've received 100 million of funding, in which we also participated with KKR as a lead investor. Then we've had exits of One Inc., Modern Message, and Chiron Health from our US funds. Each of them have gone on significantly better multiples than we entered. So that has been few good successes that we've had in the recent few years.
And there is some example of invested company that are currently working in a very, very active and growing way with AXA Group. Again, just to see out, again, not to see also the strategic angle beyond the investment angle.
So we are working with a lot of AXA entities are working with the security scorecard. Now, security scorecard looks at your internal stack of specifically SME and tells you about your system vulnerability to cyber attacks. And also one of the AXA Venture Partners company, which is BioBeats, which works in using haptics data to manage workplace stress. That is another entity that's another venture which a lot of our employee benefit schemes within AXA Group are working actively, because mental health is a very critical area for AXA Group, and as for many other insurers and human race as such, because mental well-being is as important as physical well-being in general progress of humanity. So it is another venture that we are working in AXA Group very closely with.
And just to go a bit more on the mechanics of the investment for AXA Venture Partners, is how it works is quite a separate entity. They are totally independent from AXA in terms of their investment decision. There should be a sort of internal approval from the business unit before investment. They can invest also to companies that are not that don't have an immediate direct interest for the business unit. How does it work, the investment process?
Like any asset management entity, it is separated from the LPs. Mm-hmm. And the reason why asset management entities get separated from LP is to remove them from influence of a single limited partners. And there is a investment strategy process and philosophy which is agreed with the limited partners. Otherwise, operating company and the fund manager manages it at arm's length basis from any single client influence as per the regulated requirements. It has its own structure of decision making, a board which takes decision. There are general partners and investment associates. There is a advisory board where some AXA Group members are representative of LPs in that board. So it is very, very laid out per the regulations in the countries and operated as any investment manager.
The final question about investment, then we move on the collaboration side that is equally important. Typically for CVC, the typical dilemma or the typical, you differentiate CVC based on the horizon of investment. There is, pretty famous categorization between Horizon 1, so immediate needs for the business unit, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3, there's definitely more long-term approach. Looking again from 10 miles view at AXA Venture Partner, what's the balance between H1, H2, H3, again, from your experience, from your perspective?
I think most of it is H1 and H2. If I look at the current portfolio of active companies, there are use cases in each of these entities where they could be supporting our insurance businesses. If we look at our insurance business, which is commercial lines and commercial lines protection and health focused, we have the startups, which are enterprise SaaS, could definitely help our SME customers in workforce planning, workforce management. There are startups in cybersecurity who could support our SME customers. Then startups which like ContGuard, which is in marine IoT, that can support our marine insurance business. So it is more Horizon 1 and 2 focus, bringing to Horizon 1 and 2 technologies which are currently deployed and would be relevant for Horizon 3 as well. And we keep track of how these technologies are evolving in these use cases.
Very, very good. Moving from investment to the collaboration side. And by the way, if there are any questions from the live stream, please let us know so we can take a look at them, and then we have some time at the end to pick them up. But going from the investment to the collaboration side, I think that also AXA is working actively with a certain number of startups, also beyond the investment part, also without even investing. I think a good, interesting example, if I can remember, is the German tier. Can you provide some example of also how AXA is working with startups also without passing through the investment arms that we just mentioned?
So tier, the instance that you took, we did invest in it. So tier is a German micro-mobility scale-up. It provides short-term micro scooter rentals. We, as AXA, are providing them liability insurance for their entire scooter fleet in Germany. We are also...
are you invested into tier off balance, if I can remember? Because
we are, the German balance sheet invests in it.
Okay, perfect.
So
it's the German AXA Germany.
So not transversal, but in AXA Germany. Similarly, we have a joint venture, which is with Doctor Care Anywhere and AXA Health Business in UK, PPP. It is... what the joint venture is doing, it's providing end-to-end, I want to say, primary care to customers, from teleconsultation to drug delivery to electronic medical record of the patient, push notification to the patients when their appointments are through, also managing the entire care coordination if they are ill with the hospitals, the primary care provider, secondary care provider. So a integrated system, which was only this DCA AXA PPP JV was announced last month. Already the teleconsultation service is providing a lot of service to a whole lot of our members, and both corporate and individual in this time of crisis where you can't really go to your doctor. So it's been already proving a great deal of benefit for our member base.
Yes, quite forward-looking. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Got it. And talking about, again, based on your experience, also moving from one company to another, again, innovation and open innovation today are pretty relevant things and pretty relevant buzzword. And then when company move into the execution phase, there are a lot of internal barriers, obstacles, roadblocks that are driven by processes, culture, and whatever. So looking at AXA as a group, how the innovation culture is currently widespread, A, and B, what are the main obstacles that still has to be resolved, overcome in order to moving faster into this area? Because again, we see that typically all large corporations have pretty important barriers to overcome, unfortunately.
So, let me break this down. Firstly, do we have a pervasive innovation culture in AXA? We are trying to build one. We have successes, and we have not a lot of trials which haven't run that well. So, on the whole, if we look at the whole of the industry, insurance industry, I would say that AXA Group is in a good place. One, insurance industry as in itself is very risk-averse industry. And because the industry hasn't faced major transitions or shocks like banking industry it tends to move more slowly and has a greater deal of inertia in doing disruptive innovation. So within that context, AXA does recognize that technology in itself is changing the processes which are intrinsic to insurance, and technology is also changing customer behavior. Therefore, there is a need to integrate technology or more tech-focused interfaces with the customer into our existing day-to-day processes. That's been done quite successfully. Disruptive innovation, wherein we believe that something new should be built from scratch and not with a legacy in mind. That's an area where we have had fledgling successes. It's scaling is again something that a conundrum that we are working through. So how do you create these ventures which are digital first or tech led, but how do you scale them in an industry which still operates the way insurance does? So it's in terms of culture, we have a broad understanding that we do culturally need to be more open to new ideas from outside, and the world outside should influence us a great deal in how we define our processes, and who we hire and what trainings we provide. But the whole process in itself is working at faster pace than insurance, but still in insurance space.
Do you have any anecdotal story to tell, just to pitch the dichotomy between again the willingness to innovate, but the roadblocks, something like that you can remember? I haven't asked you before, so you can also say no, because again, it's not something that we prepare in our. I think it's sometimes interesting.
But in terms of, so we all talk about successes, but in terms of things that we learned from which didn't go as well as could have, for example, our Trove partnership in UK. We had a partnership for providing content insurance with Trove, where we were underwriting it. We thought that it would have a much faster take up, and the whole claims experience being quick would mean that it would remove a lot of inefficiencies. But what we did observe is that the user traction versus the traditional insurance was not so interesting after all. And the claims fraud experience was also quite challenging there. So because we were paying off claims very quickly, and the experience of fraudulent claims was different. I don't recall if it was drastically worrisome to our normal home content, but it was generally a worse experience than we had experience on our broader home content. And pricing as well was an issue. So you can in the itemized insurance versus a comprehensive insurance cover, each item, if you add it all together, it becomes more expensive than if you were to buy a comprehensive home cover. So at price point as well, we found that there was not such a great response as we had anticipated, but we did learn from that. Yeah. We have a claims transformation program, which is simplifying claims and making it faster to make claims in all categories, all lines of businesses. So it's a learning experience, and digital interfaces with the customers, customer acquisition, we've learned a great deal from that experience.
Yeah, again, it is often said that when you are dealing with innovation, there are no failures. It's just learning, and most of the time you're learning, and then just a few times you are successful. But when you learn, you have definitely more opportunity to get one. So it's time to open up to some question. Let me pick up one that actually is one that I wanted to ask you, and I haven't not yet. Is what are the main technologies that as AXA you're looking at?
So in technologies, if it depends on the lines of businesses. So within digital health space, which is a very interesting area for us, the technologies that we are looking are a lot in claims area, in using AI in fraud detection. A lot of technology application in user acquisition, again using supervised and unsupervised machine learning. Also again, machine learning in underwriting is an interesting use case. We are also in digital health space using virtual reality and augmented reality for mental health therapies, pain management, etc. And also training staff through VR in safety in commercial lines is another area that is very interesting. Again, aligned to that, we also see are experimenting with IoT, specifically in marine insurance, where we have partnerships at AXA XL with Parcel and also ContGuard, which has a relationship in marine insurance and tracking marine IoT for management of goods in transit. Also giving right kind of advice on if there is a deterioration once the goods are in transit. Again, IoT in haptics on personal health management. That is again an area that is interesting. We are working on blockchain use cases. One of the successful one was with AXA partners and a French startup called Stratum, where we have automated payment of unemployment benefits in multiple geographies through AXA partners and Stratum.
There is a question for one of our scale-ups that is from Pierce Corfield. That is very specific, but specifically is he asks if asset management is an area of interest, and then how a company like AXA might be interested in something like that.
Investment management.
Asset management, yes.
Okay, so we are a big investment manager. We have 500 billion euros of assets, 500 or 600. I keep forgetting.
A lot of money.
A lot of money of the insurance balance sheet in assets under management under AXA IM. AXA IM is two strategic business units. One is traditional asset classes, which are like traded equities, fixed income. And then we have AXA IM Alts, which is alternative asset management, which means real estate investments, operating companies of real estate investments, other real assets. And so that's an area which we are also looking at the businesses themselves are looking at how we can make fund management process more efficient and imputing new alternate data sets and various other machine learning applications within asset management processes.
Okay, that's a conversation to be followed during the next summit in London, hopefully in June. And another question, probably you've seen the big announcement of Swiss Re that has started partnering with larger tech giants. And so this is another question that is asking, how are you working with the new tech titans like Google, the likes of Google, Apple, Amazon? What's the strategy for AXA working with the big ones?
So we're working with all the GAFAs across various regions. We are also working with new economy players like Uber. We have a business unit called the Global Enterprise Management, which coordinates multiple geography efforts. So, for instance, with Uber and Musk, we would have our Global Enterprise Management account head would have a sight of what we are doing in various geographies with them. We are in multiple geographies. Microsoft is our cloud provider, and also we're working with them on various applications, similar with Amazon and Google as well.
Let's take a final questions that is about, it's pretty interesting. How do you see the merging context of what are called the voice assistants? Are they a game changer? Are you finding or working on some specific ways of implementing them in your business? How's that?
Merging of, apologies, I didn't get the first part
voice
of it.
Assistants, the Alexa of the world. So how's the approach of AXA or you're developing something, you're developing some specific skills to work with them? What's the strategy if you have still figure out one? This thing is an interesting area.
So this is an area that I know specifically and episodically. There is a centralized strategy which I don't have knowledge of,
okay.
But we have in various geographies integration of voice assisted inputs into by customers. Also, when people are trying to quote and buy, do the quote and buy journey instead of just the plain web interfaces, mobile interfaces, voice interfaces are also being tested in some geographies. Each of these areas of innovation tends to be held coordinated by our group operation entity, which also has visibility and ownership of tech stacks, which are part of AXA Group. So my knowledge there is a bit weak. I can only tell you what I know.
It's good just to point out what is happening there. Okay, I think plenty of interesting inputs, and definitely we need to dig even more, and so probably we may repurpose something. So let's first of all, let me thank you for the time that we spent together. I think it's very, very useful to learn from what the innovation leaders are doing, and also to try to provide more clarity, more understanding in terms of structure, because again, corporates are very, very, I define typically large corporate as a large house with multiple rooms. And so from inside it's difficult to move inside, but imagine from outside, specifically from the startup world, there are very limited purpose, also to understand which would be the right partner to approach a large entity. And so I believe that it's quite important to help people to understanding where innovation is run inside this large organization. Typically, there are plenty of different entities that are dealing with innovation, and so it's important to have people understanding, or sort of to having a sort of a map for moving inside and addressing which is the most appropriate unit that might start a collaboration. So that is the goal of this chat that we are doing, and it is the core of our work to help to navigate through these big carriers and help the speedboats that are the starter to hopefully to find out with some of them. and start building a better world together. So thank you a lot for the time. I think it's been pretty interesting conversation, at least for me. And talk to you soon and meet you hopefully in London during our next summit physically in June, as this COVID-19 outbreak will be contained. Thank you for your time and stay safe.
Thank you.